My dad wanted us to see the world, and we drove from New York all the way to Tierra del Fuego in the tip of South America. We drove all along the Andes of South America to the very tip. We spent a year in Patagonia. My dad was a bush pilot and he worked for all kinds of people.
You better run, you better run, you better run for your life. Two meter feet and run, but I won't be the run, you better run for your life. 2 meter feet and run, oh, you party. Hear me carefully, listen carefully. It's not a good thing to give another man wife. Hear me carefully. Listen carefully. It's not a good thing to try to keep an eye. One Sunday morning, Mr. Peter got for a walk. He didn't got the way to go, so he went and visit a friend. But this time what was shot, you must say, that the old man he come. The way I look, when he was look, and I did it that time. What he did what was mad, that big people never say, all up your foot, your fool. You not see me old man he come. All up your foot, your fool.
I was asking him if they were investing, if the Smithsonian was investing in Belizean education. And he said that the research that they do is made available to Belizeans. But I was saying if they were making any special effort to disseminate that information, that knowledge that they're collecting from this reef, to get it to the students in Belize. And he said, no, if you're doing all this research in a place and you're finding out that this place has all this amazing complexity and how it works and all the beauty of this system, I think it's very important to educate everybody around here about what's here so that they can profit from it, so that now they can rent it out for its true value. I think it'd be in the world's interest that the people that live next to complex ecosystems be hyper educated, that they be educated on those resources, that they understand it, so that those resources are profitable to them for what they are. And while the diversity is going down, not enough investment is being made into educating Belizeans.
Well, we've found one of the sources of wealth. It is water, and it comes down in many rivers from the mountains in our country. Tonight we're talking about, are we doing the right thing to utilize that water to save us from buying diesel and running to the Mexicans to buy power? Or are we going overboard and destroying our environment in the process? We have several guests tonight, two of which are Norris Hall, who is the president of the Audubon Society. Correct me, you're in fact an official of the Audubon Society.
I'm a member of the Belize Audubon Society.
A member of the Belize Audubon Society. And Mr. Kimo Jale, who is an engineer. What type of engineer, Kimo?
I'm an industrial engineer, and I've been working on ecological systems projects for the last 5 years or so. In this case is a river, which is an ecological system, and we're trying to get energy from it. So there's a trade-off. You can get energy from the river and convert it into electrical energy, but you have to do it right.
We do it here in Belize?
To me, the main implication was neo-colonialism, where you don't have a country bringing an army in and conquering your country and making you its colony, but you have your government being bought off by a corporation and giving these corporations rights in your land. So a corporation is basically conquering a piece of your country by bribing your government. And these corporations are so much richer than we are that we can't keep our government loyal to us when there are these corporations that come in and just throw a pile of cash at them. We like to look at environmental issues in isolation, but we don't want to, because we don't want to think that we have to worry about poverty and democracy and all these different things of somebody else. We want to worry about the environment. But if you don't worry about those social issues, then you can't improve the environment, because people will worry about themselves first. If they're poor and don't have electricity, or they're much more vulnerable to abuse than if they're, standing upright. About a little less than an hour's drive away from here is the Belize Zoo. It's a small zoo. It's got all local animals. I am definitely not a fan of zoos, but these aren't animals that were captured in the wild and imprisoned in a zoo. They were animals that ended up being someone's pet, friendly animals that were used in movies, wildlife movies. And then what do you do with a tame, jaguar or a tame howler monkey after you're done using it? Put them in a zoo and use them for educational purposes.
The large, mysterious animal is rarely seen by the people of Belize. Sharon Matola started a zoo to change that. An orphaned female named April has become something of a celebrity.
Kids love April. She's done a lot to educate people in Belize. First of all, that she represents an endangered species, and that they're gentle herbivores. We celebrate her birthday every year, and it's a time when kids can come out and learn even more about their national animal. Is everybody ready to see April eat her birthday cake? Yeah!
And I'll be talking about these animals and what they have to do with Belize's ecosystems, whether they're endangered, whether they're being hit hard, or whether they're doing well here. Family that we stayed with, and they had one of these monkeys, a spider monkey named Jarre. And he used to go climb up over the fire heart where they had the meat drying, and he'd grab little strips of meat, and he would call his dog, and there were about 6 dogs, and he'd throw meat to one particular dog. And he'd whistle, he'd do a little fake whistle, and the dog would come and he'd throw food to the dog. And he eventually tamed the dog to where he could ride the dog. And he'd ride the dog all over the place. But the problem was, family would call the dogs, they'd feed the dog just by throwing scraps on the floor. And the dogs would all jump up and run over to the food, and Monkey's dog couldn't get to the food as quick as the other dogs. And he gradually got skinnier and skinnier from dragging this monkey around, and he died. So, when you say a monkey on your back. When we get to my farm, I'll give you a little tour of my farm, my version of permaculture. Belizean style, what things can grow here, what type of construction works for us, things that we used to do and we're not doing, and I think we maybe should be going back to, like thatch huts. It's a really good roof. So I'll be showing you what I'm doing on my farm. It's just my little project, a little bit of permaculture, a little bit of organic farming, a little bit of construction that has a low carbon footprint, Belize style. And gradually the whole fence will become a living fence, and these guys fatten up and they fuse together. And I've seen fences that look almost like a living wall of sticks. And I'm doing different species. There's there's the Madre Cacao, there's Gumbo Limbo, there's Pita. There are probably 10 different species that I'm using just to make my fence. So it'll be a biodiverse line of trees. More chaya, coconut trees. See little coconut trees over there? And this is cocoa yam, not the same as coconut tree. And he's reached the end of his growing cycle. See his leaves, they're dying, and it looks pitiful. What kind of thing is that? Well, this, you can eat the leaf, the shoot, the young leaf. You take that, you slice it up, cook it. It's another green. These guys that we had from Guatemala, this old man, this 70-year-old guy and his 70-year-old wife, and they were the caretakers here for a while. And they would harvest all kinds of stuff. they wouldn't even tell us. They're kind of embarrassed to be eating bush. And we'd say, what are you eating now? And it's like, oh, it's another bush, I'm sorry, you know, that because it's considered country or poor or, you know, a little primitive to be eating all this bush that no one else eats. But we need to learn about all these bushes that people ate before and kept them healthy before, and that people are forgetting are edible. So they taught us a lot about plants that they're shy to admit that they eat, but we want to know about food that you can eat, because our whole garden has a whole bunch of, our garden is much more garden to them to us, because we don't even know about all of these plants. We're forgetting it. And I don't want to live in a way that I can live comfortably in the farm because I can afford a generator, but all my neighbors can't. I want to make a farm that's a model, that's usable for low-income Belizeans. So we want to make living on the land dignified, where you have a computer, you have light, you have a phone. So all I have in order to run my house is that one little solar panel. That's the key. If you want to go solar, you have to reduce your electricity dramatically. After lunch, we'll head up to Sunantunich. It's a Mayan ruin, just on the other side of the Mopan River, in a village named Sokotsi.
Solamente una vez se entregue el alma con la dulce y total renunciación. Una vez nada más en mi huerto brilló la esperanza, la esperanza en el camino de mi soledad. Solamente una
That shell, is that their like body or is that
their skin, but
That's
what's
their
more
exoskeleton.
amazing that the caterpillar, they to go into this stage, they will open their skin, even their head capsule will split open, and the inside is what will form the chrysalis. The first time that I met Kimo Jolie was when he was teaching at Sacred Heart College. He would bring his students here to ask questions about butterflies. Since then, I have been, I would say, friends with Kimo Jolie, and he's a nice fellow, and I like what he's doing. I wouldn't say that all people listen to him, because I mean, whatever you do, you will have some opposition also, no? But I believe that a lot of people listen to him.
My whole life just changed. I went into conservation, preservation, and we started calling ourselves environmentalists. Other friends, classmates, families, and you can say almost half of our community has been inspired about with Kimo Jolie. He's a great leader, even though he doesn't want to take it that way. But I think he's a great leader. And because of people like him, we can be prosperous. Some doesn't see it that way, but because of him, there's lots of jobs and lots of opportunities.
Emil Games, Victor's cousin, who's one of the other lead guys that works with me, he was a student of mine when I was teaching environmental science at Sacred Heart Junior College. When I got him, I was told by the other teachers that, oh, he's a troublemaker, he's terrible, he's, you know, you're gonna see, he's, whew, can't keep him. But my program was so outdoor focused. You know, I would tell my students, listen, next week, if you guys are cool with it, instead of class, let's go this weekend up into Pine Ridge. We'll spend a couple days out there and that'll be class, you know. So my program was very outdoor based, and Emil was a shining star there. So I think where he was thought of as a troublemaker were these classes that keep him locked up, and I think it's unnatural. I think a healthy young human wants to be climbing trees and running around and swimming, and the problem is that they want to learn in the real world, folks. And you see Emil full of tattoos. And Victor, when he went to get his tour guide license, they were looking at his tattoos. Oh, those are gang-related tattoos. What if you get a tourist who's from the opposing gang? Will you host? Ridiculous, you know? They've got these stereotypes that if you have tattoos, you're a gangster, and you guys have seen Victor's grabbed onto birding, you know, quickly. He's become really good very quickly. And he's full of tattoos, so myth, what do you call that? The myth buster?
That one? Yes. So that's his vocalization, that's his song. Then his car, when he goes pick pick, that's his car.
Mythbuster. Tattoos don't mean you're messed up, you know? You can be great ecologists and biologists and naturalists, you know? And a lot of times tattoos mean that you just don't respond well to being in a classroom studying all day.
It inspires people, right? And then it makes them stronger, even though they might look weak. So that they are mentally strong. I can consider myself physically fit, but mentally I'm still going there on my heights, because I'm afraid of heights. But I'm working on it. So it's just slowly.
You did cliff jumping with us.
Yeah, once you have a good mentor, I think that's the way to go. That's the best way to go. They can lead the path, and others to follow the right direction, the correct way, not being misled. I think that's what Kimo does.
So the officers are now advancing into the yard where these men have started. Not men, these are kids, some of them 15, 16 year old, and they have started. This is a young man, he has a machete in his hand. I would give him no more than 16 years of age. He has on a mask over his face, and he has a machete in his hand, and he's teasing the police officers. He's telling them to come. He's ready for them, and he's ready for just about anything. These are the officers behind the yard. They are waiting to scale the fence.
The government had given this one bus company a monopoly over transport, and as soon as they did that, they doubled the rates. And a bunch of students from this town go to high school in the next town over. And bus fare is about half of the money that they have per day, like for lunch and stuff. So when you double the bus fare, it was eating into their food. And they had a protest. They finished walking the circuit that they were allowed to walk, and after they finished, even though they had a license to protest like from 8 to 10, and it was still 9 o'clock, the police were like, well, you did the cycle, you did the whole route, it's time to go home. They read them the riot act, and they try to make everyone go home, so everyone assembled into some neighbors' yards there. And they said, well, let's have our meeting right here, you know, this is private property, we can talk. And after reading the riot act, the police said no, they couldn't assemble even in a private yard. And they started dragging people out of the yard. They grabbed this lady by the hair and they were dragging around. Her son jumped in, and that's how it started, how it became physical.
They have made it into the yard. They have detained 4 young men. They are being frisked. Now these are maybe high school students. As I said, these are very young kids out there. On Monday, they were extremely about the bus fares. Some of them are given $3 to go to school. Now they used to pay 50 cents per ride to and from school. But with the bus increase, it turned into $1. $1 to go and $1 to come.
Why are you out here originally? I am from Benke. I am one who uses the bus daily. Go to college, Sacred Heart.
You are here illegally. You are blocking the road, they claim. Will you move?
No, we won't move. Because the government should be the one controlling the economy, not the economy controlling the government.
Of transportation for food, which is unrealistic for anybody. Okay, Indira, what we are seeing here is that they have a number of these young kids inside of this house, and the officers closed the doors on us. Nobody.
What's happening in there?
We have no idea, Indira. They locked the door. They have about 15 or 16 students Nobody has any idea what was going on in there.
Have they touched my son?
Mr. Jolly, you're a teacher. And some of your students are in there. What do you feel about the situation as it's developing?
Well, I feel they're pushing Belize to revolution. I don't want to see that. It's a sad shame because Guatemala has had a revolution, Honduras has, Nicaragua, Salvador, and they're asking Belize to have the same problem. Instead of peacefully solving a situation, instead of defending the rights of the people, the government is defending the bus line. They don't have no representative from government here to quiet this down.
And the whole thing was because the government was defending the bus company that they had given a monopoly to. Take your snorkeling gear, we can snorkel the river. It'll be a tributary of the same Belize River that we just bathed in today. The ecology of that river's watershed is a little bit unique in Belize. It was the first watershed that was dammed. Speaking on the phone with this guy, this professor from University of Florida, about I think ecosystems are alive and that this mythology of a lot of hunter-gatherer people has to do with what really is going on. It's like a different way of viewing it. Trees have personalities and there's a whole social system going on in a forest. The DNA gives them character. He told me, come to university and I'll get you in. Do a master's here with us. So I went and he started teaching me systems ecology. And it was a different view to ecosystems. It was looking at ecosystems as machines that self-organize in ways that maximize power. Ecosystems have functional roles. The parts of an ecosystem have functional roles, or like organs of it. But ecosystems have functions, like swamps are like kidneys. That was explained by Indians as that's what ecosystems have, a personality and a job, like a personality and a social role within this social network that's an ecosystem. That's how people here spoke about functional ecology. And these people are all talking to the trees and animals take it as normal, of course, the forest is alive, we're part of it. So I realized that's the key to understanding ecology. You have to talk to it. As long as you keep treating it like these dumb animals that are just competing in this savage, survival of the fittest, wild, orderless type of thing, it's not that. It's alive like we. Boy, when I got into school, it was this formalized structure, and who was paying for the research were these industries, and they did not want to hear of my theory. It was too spaced out. I belonged in anthropology department. That wasn't hard engineering. And Belize kept calling me. My friends here started calling me because they wanted me to get involved with this dam. They tried to talk me into staying here because ecotourism was coming into Belize. This area is at the heart of a national controversy surrounding the construction of the proposed Chalillo Dam. The environmental camp is concerned that if this dam is constructed, it would flood nearly 80% of this habitat, which is critical to local and regional wildlife populations, as well as to the health of the river downstream.
Chalillo, a proposed dam and power plant on Macal River, would serve as a reservoir several miles above the existing power station at Moyahon. The Belize Electricity Limited says Chalillo will help Moyahon produce power at a lower price. One invited U.S. NGO feels the project is promising more than it can deliver.
The plan has unleashed a barrage of criticism from environmentalists. The environmental groups fear the project would flood a sensitive jungle habitat, whose thick riverbank vegetation offers a bountiful green feast for tapirs, Belize's noodle-nosed national animal, which share the remote area with jaguars and scarlet macaws.
A river runs through it. So remote, so little studied, the twisting Raspaculo winds down the lush mountains of Belize. Greg Show is a naturalist by trade and a Maya by heritage. he enters a distant valley once inhabited by his ancestors. The other half of the team is Sharon Mottola, one of the leading conservationists in Belize. She and Greg work full-time to document why this place is crucial to their nation's future.
What makes the Raspacola River Valley so special? Number one, it's extremely remote. It's the only place in Central America where these rare species live in an unmolested habitat.
Well, I was taking my students and anybody else that I could into this valley to see the scarlet macaw, to see how precious this place was. And I couldn't get a permit to go in there because it's a reserve. And I was, well, I don't know. Sharon Mottola didn't want Belizeans going back there because she thought they would mess the place up. And when I went to conservation, to the government department to get my permit to take my students back there, they told me, it's your friend Sharon who keeps you out of there because she has all these research sites there and no one's allowed to go there. So I spoke to her and said, listen, we need to get Belizeans in there. And she thought that was a terrible idea. If we get Belizeans in there, it's going to impact the wildlife populations and people are going to start going back there and poaching. And
when they come out here, they see the trees, they see the animals, they feel what the animals are going through. You know, imagine if they lose their habitats, where are they going to stay?
So some of the same environmentalists that were trying to stop the dam were also adamant about keeping Belizeans out of the area. So Belizeans resented conservation that keeps them out. They were like, well, that's a white people playground, but we don't go there. Tourists were going back there making, you know, these exotic safari tours back there.
Meanwhile, Mick Fleming, owner of the Chaw Creek Resort, was running his own investigation. Fleming's resort sprawls over 330 acres of riverside jungle, a few miles east of the Guatemalan border and directly downriver of the Chilillo site. Howler monkeys serenaded Chaw Creek's guests as the visitors paddled downstream past oropendola nests and sunbathing crocodiles. Business and the environment were never at odds to Fleming. The environment was his business. At the heart of that business was the river. If Chilillo was going to screw up the McCall, Mick Fleming wanted to know about it. After listening to Sharon's presentation in San Ignacio, he called an old family friend named Kimo Jolly, an athletic man with enormous teeth. Jolly was an environmental engineer who taught science at Sacred Heart Junior College in San Ignacio. Other resort owners were also worried about the dam. Fleming persuaded a few of them to chip in to hire Kimo Jolly to study the project. A few weeks later, Jolly returned with his summary. "It's worse than you think," he told Fleming. Fleming went quiet as he thumbed through Jolly's notes. "We've got to publicize this."
Mick was always loyal against the Chilillo. He was always loyal against it. But their economic category that they're in doesn't allow them. For example, I wanted transparency. I wanted, let's open up the books. Let's see how much this is costing and where the money is going. So I asked the resorts to open up their books. Let's see how much money you're making and how much is going to workers, and to show that a chunk of your money is going. Oh, nobody wanted to open. Everybody got pissed off at me when I started suggesting, let's open up our books. So a lot of the big resorts are not rubbing shoulders with their workers. So I said, let's get your workers on board. Let's get all the resorts and their workers go down to a protest and say, listen, if this dam goes through, all of us are going to lose. They couldn't do that because they weren't opening up their books to their staff, you know? And now me just suggesting it, I was accused of unionizing people's staff.
Jolly thought it over. Speaking out against the dam was nothing but trouble. He surely didn't want to make an enemy of Norris Hall. But then he thought about the river. He spent his teenage years playing in the McCall. He drank its water. He bathed in it. He cooked with it. It was a part of him, whether he wanted it or not. He felt the gringos were pushing him to the front of the line because they didn't want to stick their own necks out. But in the end, he figured he owed it to the river. Jolly presented his findings at a meeting of the Belize Audubon Society.
Why do you think they would go ahead investing this amount of money if it won't work out well for them?
Because whether the dam works or not, the people that build the dam are going to make money. The bank that finances the dam, that's $30 million US, is going to make money by lending BEL the money to build that dam.
Going ahead with Cholillo would mean flooding about 3.5 square miles of rainforest. Earlier this month, BEL released the environmental impact assessment, but during their forum last week, admitted that it was incomplete. Jolly says the public has got to take the matter in their own hands to get the answers they need.
The next day's reporter splashed him across the front page. "Engineer bashes Cholillo," the headline said. Bwah, Jolly thought. You're in for it now. For the next 2 weeks, Chemo Jolly was the talk of Belize. The radio call-in shows on Love FM and KREM became Chemo debates. He faced down Norris Hall on One-on-One, Belize's political television talk show.
It requires 71% of the river's flow to make it happen, to make it feasible.
Yeah, second one?
That's a lot. The second one is that it will only generate, with that flow, it can only generate an extra 7 megawatts.
Yeah.
It can produce a little more electricity, but only during off-peak time. The third one is that the study concludes right in the beginning of the study that it's not economic. That basically, for an investment of $20 million, they expect 20 million US, they expect to get benefits back of $14 million of electricity. Up until that point, the opposition to the dam was being led by Sharon Matola. The main argument against the dam is that it was going to flood this valley that had a lot of important wildlife. It was in a forest reserve that the government didn't allow people to go into. So Belizeans didn't feel very connected to that little piece of bush back there. So my strategy was, well, let's look at the money. You know, I think that when you destroy the environment, you become impoverished. When we got into this, everyone is talking about parrots and the macaws and the environmental damage. What I'm saying is, I want to see good, solid reports that show this to be an economical. I want to see. I want to see this thing to change and not talk so much about the environmental aspects, but come out with some good, solid reports that show, is this really saving money? So I think these decisions that are bad for the environment, maybe on the short term make a profit, but in the long term, you can show that they will impoverish people economically.
We'll have to carry on this another time. What's your final? I want to say that Chemo, they talk about the environment, that is not a factory. This project is making his political history because it is one of the few major development projects in Belize that has the support of both political parties. And okay, who say what? That or so.
We need the support of the people. We need the support of the people who are going to be paying for electricity. No.
Chemo, any final word to wrap up? We're going.
My final words are, it doesn't matter if UDP, PUP likes the thing. I want to see numbers that show it will make electricity cheaper and that this thing is going to work. Right now, the only feasibility study available is saying it doesn't work.
Preliminary, including worst case scenarios.
On that note, I want to say, gentlemen,
politicians attacked him. Friends and neighbors defended him. Mick Fleming called him up during the height of the storm. "Don't worry about it, Chemo," he said. "They're not going to do anything." That was easy for Fleming to say. Jolly wasn't so sure. He talked to an old friend named Maggie Cho one night. Maggie was the widow of Julian Cho, a Maya activist who fought to stop a Malaysian logging company from clear-cutting ancestral Mayan land in southern Belize. 6 months before Jolly presented his report, Julian Cho had been found dead at the bottom of a staircase in his own house. The police called it an accident. Maggie Cho believed her husband was murdered.
Chemo, you watch out. They're gonna kill you. This dam is bigger than any of what Julian was into.
Well, if you hotels are too scared to say that you're against it, well, you're going to lose the river. Yeah. And they lost the river. Yep. They got a very different looking river right now. Yeah. And they had to spend money in a water purification plant because they can't drink the water from it anymore.
12 types of fishes were caught from the McCall River, of which 50% had levels of mercury above the recommended level. A significant increase in mercury levels to almost 3 times its previous reading.
One of the things that I like about him is that he is outspoken. If something is wrong, he would not cover for that. He will say, okay, this is wrong. Because there's a lot of people, I mean, because they don't want to get into trouble, especially if they have a job with the government, you want to say or do things that would probably put your job in jeopardy.
Consumption of high mercury levels can lead to mental retardation in children, poor development of infants, vision impairment, nervousness, and weakening of muscles in the hand and feet. Since 2007, the Ministry of Health has been observing the fish in the McCall River for levels of mercury.
They're purifying the water, but they ain't taking the mercury out. Okay. So there's signs up and down the river that you can't eat the fish anymore because they're mercury poisoned, but they're serving mercury poisoned water to their guests because their purification system ain't removing mercury. Those are the costs of spinelessness.
Certain ministers were fed up with Kimo Jolly. He'd already embarrassed the government by publicizing Chaleo's numerous flaws. He would not be allowed to do it again. The next day, Kimo Jolly was fired. The reporters splashed the news on its front page.
And well, Kimo is somebody that, okay, he doesn't care. I mean, he will say what he wants to say, and if he lost his job, well, he will still survive. I mean, that's what he's doing. Since he left high school, he's still alive. I mean, and he's living, and he's doing nice things also.
If afterwards it doesn't work, then all they have to do is say, well, listen, sorry, we invested all this money in this dam. It doesn't produce as cheap as we expected. Sorry, what are we going to do? We raise electricity rates.
Jolly, thanks very much for coming out tonight to shed a little light.
Shortly after Jolly's firing, the Belizean government sold their hydroelectric program, and the newly privatized Belize Water Services named Norris Hall as their chairman.
It is not going to change. We are going to say that you are wrong, my brother. You are wrong.
Just as Kimo Jolly predicted, upon completion of the Chaleo Dam in 2005, the government immediately announced a 12% increase in electricity prices, followed by another 13% price hike in 2006. Belizeans now pay the highest prices for electricity in all of Central America, and they remain dependent on Mexico and foreign oil sources for their energy needs.
I love the environment, but I didn't think that I could convince the public to fight the dam just based on their love for the environment. So I decided to pretend like, let's just leave the environment out of this and look at the money. I knew that that would get public attention by looking at the money. So to me, it was colonialism. But it was a new approach. Instead of an army coming in, it was a corporation coming in with dollars and bribing people and then getting a piece of paper that says this piece of Belize is theirs, and all of our electricity now is coming from them, and we have to pay them for our electricity. So to me, those are all issues in social justice. When you only have a monopoly that owns a utility and now that's owned by a foreign company, you're not in a very good position to negotiate with them. So you have to achieve social justice for there to be environmental justice. Teaching ecology in the field can be a beautiful thing.